Now, sugars aren't actually in this linear format truly. They actually exist in a resonance form where they're going between a linear format, like the drawings we've seen before. So, for example, like this. This is a linear form of a sugar. But realistically, these sugars actually bend in on themselves and form rings. This is a type of reaction. Now, this reaction happens in carbohydrates, and we are applying it to carbohydrates, but it is a reaction that occurs outside of the realm of carbohydrate chemistry. So this is a reaction you could do in organic chemistry with other molecules. And this is the conversion of a hemiacetal or a hemiketal to a acetyl or a ketal. So here is this hemiacetal or hemiketal reaction. Remember that we talked about sugars either having an aldehyde top or a ketone top. And that is key for this reaction. There are one set of sugars that have aldehydes, which will go through this hemiacetal reaction, and another set of sugars that have a ketone top, the ones that we talked about, that go through a hemiketal reaction. Now, again, I'm giving you the base idea of the reaction, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like in an actual sugar. A hemiacetal reaction takes an aldehyde and alcohol and reacts them together to attach them. So you can see that here our alcohol has actually added itself onto the aldehyde. Similarly, this alcohol adds itself onto the structure of the ketone. The way that this reacts to make an actual ring in a sugar is because the aldehyde or the ketone and the alcohol that are reacting are on the exact same structure. So instead of two separate molecules, an alcohol that attaches to an aldehyde, this is all one structure. So again, and if we have an aldehyde and an alcohol, instead of the alcohol just adding on to the aldehyde, imagine that the aldehyde and the alcohol are attached, and then the alcohol adds on to the aldehyde. That would make a ring. Similar with the ketone, same principle. Imagine that the ketone and the alcohol are already attached. When this reaction occurs, they then cyclize and form a ring. Again, that's exactly what happens with sugars. Here is glucose written in its linear form. For sugars, the hemiacetal or hemiketal that forms occurs always between the top aldehyde or ketone on the sugar. In this case, for glucose, it is an aldehyde. So the top one position of the sugar, which is the, again, aldehyde or ketone, reacts with the bottom alcohol that is a chiral alcohol. So I want to be clear here because technically there is an alcohol right here, always on the bottom of all of these sugars. This alcohol is not chiral. All of these centers, 1, 2, 3, 4, that are written out separately are chiral centers. They are carbons that have 4 different things attached to them. So the very last chiral center with an alcohol on it, that alcohol is the one that reacts with our top aldehyde or ketone, forming a loop. And you can see the loop starting to form here. Here is that bottom OH group. Now notice our CH2OH group, this very bottom group, is still on the linear chain. It's not the one reacting. So that OH group is going to go in and attach and form a bond where that, in this case, aldehyde was. After some restructuring, what you get is this situation where you have the OH now attached to the carbon, and where our carbonyl was, or our double bond O was, we actually form a new alcohol group, a new OH group. Now, it should be noted that the orientation of this new OH group is variable. So depending on how this reaction goes, the new OH group that forms where the carbonyl used to be could be on this bottom part as shown, or it could be an OH here and an H here. So an OH on the top part instead. My pen does not want to. So it could be like this instead, for example. So again, where that new OH group ends up, this is where the carbonyl used to be, is variable. We're going to talk a lot more about that new OH group when we make a cyclical compound. Now, sugars that are 5-membered and 6-membered especially readily undergo this cyclization step. Smaller sugars, those ones we talked about that maybe only have 3 carbons or 4 carbons long, it's a little bit harder for them to form and retain that cyclical structure because it's strained. So pentoses and hexoses are the ones that normally are in this cyclical form or are resonated between the cyclical form, as opposed to the smaller sugars, which generally are going to stay in their linear form. Now, as I just said, that formal carbonyl carbon, when it undergoes this reaction, it actually becomes a new chiral center. So it is a carbon, right, that now has 4 different things attached to it. It has an OH group on it now instead of that double bond O. It has the hydrogen on it that it previously had, or if it was a ketone, this would be that CH2OH group that the ketone has on it, on the top part of the ketone. So these 2 things are 2 different things, and of course it now is attached to the 2 different areas of the ring, making it a new chiral center. The former carbonyl oxygen, as I noted, becomes a new hydroxyl group or a new alcohol. And its position, if it is up or down, is determined and is written using this nomenclature alpha or beta. So if the hydroxyl group is on the, essentially if it is in the down position, we call this the alpha position. So I want to be clear. Here we're actually showing two different versions, the down position versus the up position. I think this got cut off. I should have an H there. This is alpha and this is beta. So same glucose molecule. This is glucose that has now been cyclized. Depending on where that new OH group goes in the down or the up position, it will be an alpha or a beta. Now, this is kind of the fast and dirty way to remember that it is down or up. But I'm going to show you that anytime a new ring is formed, we always have an oxygen, as I'm showing. And for example, if this was a 6-membered, 6-carbon long structure, you'd have a 6-membered ring. I'm just putting these dots here to count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is a 6-membered ring, including the oxygen, 6-membered ring. You can also, as we showed, have sugars that are 5 carbons long, which would look like this, a 5-membered ring. In all cases, that CH2OH group that was previously on the very bottom of a structure ends up next to the oxygen. Normally, it is written like this, almost like a little flag with an OH group on it. So this point here is a carbon. This is CH2OH. I'm just drawing it in a ball and stick form. Again, CH2OH. This new alpha or beta, the new OH group, ends up on the other side of the oxygen when we cyclize. And again, it can be either in this up position or this down position. What this really relates to is if it is cis or trans to this group, this CH2OH group. If they are both up, or cis, if they are both up, that is what we truly call, in this case, the beta position. If they are both up. If they are opposite of each other, so if they're on different sides, meaning that the new OH group is down here and this CH2OH group is up, that is called alpha. So alpha means that the groups that are now on the left and the right of the oxygen are trans of each other. And beta means that the groups on the left and the right of the oxygen in the new cycle are on the same side. That is the beta position. Now I want to give you some more tips to drawing. Taking a linear structure and figuring out what it looks like as a ring can be a little bit challenging to imagine at first. But let's go over how you would draw glucose. After you memorize its linear structure, how the heck do I know how it looks like as a ring? Because I want you to know what these look like in their linear structure, but also what they look like, especially as a ring, especially for the 6-membered and 5-membered, because those two are the ones that cyclize the most. So again, all of your structures are going to have this aldehyde or ketone top part. This whole part, remember, is what's going to become our new OH group. So we're not going to deal with that just yet. This bottom part, remember, is our little flag that I just talked about. It's a CH2OH group. It's going to end up, as we see here, to the left of where our oxygen in the center is. It always ends up there. It always looks the same. That's pretty easy to remember. This section here is the section that is the variable section, the section that, depending on what sugar it is, it has a different situation of OHs up or down. So to remember how to take that information in a linear form and make the OHs in their up and down form on a ring, the easiest way to think about it is to remember how they are linearly. So for glucose, we can see that we have one OH that is on the left and these other OHs that are on the right. Now, this very bottom OH is involved in the cyclization, the one that is highlighted. So we never have to consider the very bottom OH and where it is because it is going to form in the bond with the top carbonyl or ketone. These OHs and their position, either left or right, are important for drawing out a final sugar molecule. And again, what I like to think of is taking this linear form and almost like a tree being chopped down, knock it down to the right so that the linear form is laying down like this. When it's laying down like this, you'll see that we have this OH is down, this OH is up, and this OH is down. So I've essentially taken it in this form and gone like this. So everything that was here on the top is on now at this end, and everything that was on the bottom is at this end. The up and down position of these OHs, you place as you read them, now reading from the same left to right, they go from left to right in the positions that are left over on the ring. So down, up, down. So I'm going to go over again doing glucose, how to take glucose from its linear structure and draw it into its cyclical structure. But there are two other videos going over taking glucose from linear to its cyclical and also taking fructose, which is a 5-membered ring. So similar, but slightly different variation in what you're doing and drawing that. So I'm here just showing some examples of sugars that are 6-membered or 5-membered in their cyclical version. You can see that a naming scheme for the cyclical version of a 6-membered ring is pyran because it is based on the molecule pyran. And a naming structure for a 5-membered ring is furan. So sugars can also be named based on what type of cycle they will make. If they are a 6-membered ring, for example, glucose, we also will refer to this as a glucopyranose when it is in its cyclical version. Or fructose, when it is in its cyclical version, can be referred to as fructofuranose. Now, because these rings are pretty large, just as you have talked about in organic chemistry when looking at benzenes, for example, cyclohexanes, because these are single bonded chains that are in 6-membered or 5-membered rings, The cyclohexanes do have this chair or boat conformation. The six-membered rings of the sugars also have the chair and boat conformation. But for the sugars, they favor the chair conformation because it is requiring of less energy during its interconversion. So for all of the pyranoses, the six-membered sugars, like glucose in its cyclical form, glucopyranose, it can form this chair or boat conformation, just like normal cyclohexanes, but it does prefer the chair conformation.